He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Some forms of strength cannot be seen. They don't announce themselves, don't demand attention, and never need to prove their presence. They exist in silence, a silence that doesn't signify absence, but mastery. This is not the power of command or charisma. It is not found in dominance over others. It is the quiet inner authority of one who has faced himself and no longer flinches. The world praises loud victories and visible success, but the deepest kind of power often moves unseen. It hides in the way a person endures chaos without losing their shape, in how they hold their values when there's every reason to abandon them, in how they walk alone, not because they have no one, but because they choose clarity over noise. This kind of strength cannot be borrowed or bought. It must be discovered in solitude, in discomfort, even in suffering. It asks questions most avoid. It demands a kind of silence that is not retreat, but resistance. And in that silence, something grows, slowly, unshakably, a will, a direction, a power. The man who wrote the quote that opened this video understood this. He spoke of the will, not just as a drive, but as a force of transformation, the raw energy capable of turning pain into purpose. He believed that true strength is forged not in moments of ease, but in trials we don't run from. That becoming who we are is not a path of comfort, but of confrontation with the world and, above all, with ourselves. This is not the kind of trick that can be taught in 3 steps. It's not loud, not marketable. It's a way of being, a shift so profound that it reorders what we fear, what we value, and what we believe power really is. There is a reason this idea still whispers through time. It doesn't need volume. It only needs courage to listen. What if the greatest strength is the ability to carry the unbearable without breaking? There is a moment in every thinking person's life where the question is no longer how to succeed, but how to endure. To live is not merely to survive, but to carry the weight of existence with open eyes. And that weight, the full awareness of our own finitude, our suffering, our freedom, is often far heavier than we care to admit. Most seek distractions. Some run toward pleasure, others toward purpose, still others toward ideology. But beneath it all lies a silence that cannot be silenced, the awareness that life is not inherently fair, nor ordered, nor safe, that we are not guaranteed meaning, justice, or even understanding, that suffering is not an exception, it is the rule. And yet, there are those who do not run. They do not flinch when they see life for what it is. They do not collapse under the burden of consciousness. Instead, they absorb it, transform it, carry it, not like a prisoner with a chain, but like a warrior with armor. For them, the heaviness of being does not crush, it strengthens. What makes this possible? It is not optimism, nor is it resignation. It is a kind of defiance, not loud, not angry, but rooted. A quiet decision to face the pain of life directly and still choose to create. To feel despair but not be defined by it. To suffer and still say, this, too, is mine. This is the beginning of true power. The refusal to let life's weight turn into weakness, not by denying it, not by numbing it, but by holding it, learning from it, and even loving it. To love fate, amor fati, is not to enjoy pain or chase suffering. It is to say yes to the whole of life, including its cruelty, its absurdity, its unpredictability. It is to embrace not the fantasy of what life should be, but the totality of what it is. And that yes is not passive, it is revolutionary, because it reclaims what suffering tries to take, our will. When we stop asking life to be lighter and instead become stronger, something shifts. We stop expecting the world to understand us. We stop resenting hardship. We stop waiting for rescue. We begin to act, not because we are unhurt, but because we are undefeated. In this mindset, even misfortune becomes material. Everything that wounds us becomes potential. Potential to deepen, to sharpen, to refine. Life stops being a series of obstacles and becomes a process of forging. A person who embraces this path does not need to be loud. Their power is not in what they say, but in what they withstand. Not in their victories, but in the fact that they do not need them to feel whole. Their silence is not emptiness. It is depth. It is the stillness of someone who has already faced their darkest thought and did not turn away. This is the silent trick. Not to escape the weight of existence, but to bear it so completely that it becomes fuel. The greatest battles are not fought in the world, but in the soul. To walk the path of power is not to seek control over others. It is to master the chaos within. This is the hardest war and the most silent. There are no medals, no parades, no applause, only moments of clarity carved out of confusion. Only victories no one sees but that change everything. The self is not a single unified entity. It is a battlefield of impulses, fears, desires, habits, and hidden voices. We carry within us contradictions so profound that they often paralyze our will. One moment, we aim at greatness. The next, we sabotage ourselves. One day, we dream with fire. The next, we drown in doubt. This tension is not weakness. It is the essence of being human, but most never learn to face it. They project it onto others, blaming, accusing, escaping, or they drown it in noise, consumption, entertainment, endless distraction. The inner world becomes a stranger, even an enemy, and what we refuse to face in ourselves will rule us from the shadows. True strength begins when we stop outsourcing our war. The enemy is not out there. It is the voice that says, stay comfortable. The whisper that warns, don't. Try, you'll fail. The mask that smiles in public while hiding the storm inside. And these enemies do not attack like armies. They seduce. They offer safety. They mimic reason. They wear the face of your past, your trauma, your fears, your unmet needs. To confront them is terrifying. It feels like losing everything. Identity, certainty, even sanity. But it is in this confrontation that we begin to see what is real. Silence helps. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of awareness. The space where we stop reacting and start observing. In that silence, the inner noise grows louder and then clearer. We begin to see patterns, where the fear starts, what the pain protects, how our resistance is often the exact doorway we need to walk through. In this way, silence becomes a blade, not to cut others, but to dissect the illusions we live in. The thinker behind this philosophy knew this all too well. He once said that if we stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back. Most people quote this as a warning, but what if it's not? What if that stare is the beginning of recognition? Of seeing finally the darkness we carry not as enemy, but as part of us. The goal is not to destroy the inner enemy. It is to integrate it. The part of you that is angry might be protecting your dignity. The part that doubts may be guarding against arrogance. The part that procrastinates could be terrified of failure, or worse, of success. When you see this, truly see it, your energy stops being divided. You stop wasting effort, pretending you are one thing when you are many. This is not a process of quick healing or positive affirmations. It is slow, painful, humbling, but also powerful. Because each time you face a part of yourself that once frightened you, you grow less fragile, less controlled by impulse, less dependent on validation. You stop being a puppet of your own mind. Power, in this sense, is not domination. It is integration. It is knowing the landscape of your soul so well that nothing inside you can surprise you. You've met the coward. You've met the tyrant. You've met the addict, the liar, the manipulator, and instead of exiling them, you've understood them, redirected them, forged them into something useful. This is the silent trick. While the world teaches you to fight external enemies, true philosophy teaches you to confront your inner war and win not by conquering, but by becoming whole. You are not finished. You are being shaped. Most people move through life like clay tossed in the wind, shaped by the opinions of others, hardened by disappointment, cracked by fear. But very few realize this simple truth. They are not just clay. They can be the sculptor. The idea is radical, that your identity is not something fixed, inherited, or accidental. That you are not condemned to remain as you were, or even as you are. That you can take the raw material of your experiences, even the painful, broken, shameful ones, and craft something of worth. Not in the eyes of society, but in your own. But this power comes with a price: responsibility. It is easier to be shaped than to shape. It is easier to blame our past, our culture, our trauma, than to face the uncomfortable truth that we are always complicit in who we are becoming. And that is the burden of freedom. Nothing and no one will do it for you. The philosopher, at the root of this vision, understood this well. He once warned that man is something to be overcome, not by others, but by himself. Not through self-rejection, but through self-transcendence. You are not a finished product, you are a process. And the moment you embrace this, the possibility of transformation begins. To sculpt the self is not to eliminate weakness. It is to give it a purpose. To take pain and make it fuel. To take fear and make it focus. To take the fragments of who you've been and shape them into a coherent, powerful whole. This is not self-help. It is self-crafting, and the tools are not glamorous. The first tool is awareness, the relentless examination of your own patterns, your behaviors, your thoughts. Where did they come from? Are they yours, or did you inherit them from parents, from teachers, from society? The second tool is discipline, not the kind imposed from the outside, but the quiet discipline of returning to what matters every single day, especially when you don't feel like it, especially when no one is watching, especially when it's hard. The third tool is suffering, not as something to be avoided, but as a sculptor's chisel. Pain sharpens us. If we let it, it reveals where we are fragile, false, afraid, and it dares us to do something about it. This is the slow art of becoming. It requires solitude, not isolation, but the space to think for yourself, to feel what is yours to feel, to choose what you want to become. It requires saying no to comfort when it costs growth. It requires saying yes to pain when it promises depth. And most of all, it requires vision, a sense, even vague, of who you are trying to become, not in comparison to others, not based on trends or status, but based on a truth only you can feel, a calling perhaps, a shape that feels like yours, waiting to emerge from the stone. The sculptor doesn't hate the raw stone. He sees what it could be. And that is what makes him powerful. He works with what is and slowly brings out what can be. You are the stone, and you are the sculptor. This is the silent trick. The world will tell you to accept yourself as you are. But true power lies in becoming who you are meant to be, one chisel strike at a time. Solitude is not the absence of company, but the presence of self. There is a kind of silence that is not empty, but full of questions we have buried under obligation, full of desires we have censored to be accepted, full of potential we have abandoned to be understood. This silence appears when we finally step away from the noise, from the endless scroll, from the voices telling us who to be, from the expectations pressed onto us by family, culture, education, even friends. It arrives the moment we dare to walk alone. Most people fear this walk, and rightly so. It threatens everything we've been taught to value: belonging, approval, comparison. We grow up learning to measure ourselves through others, to be good, to be liked, to be safe. And in that pursuit, we lose something crucial: our own voice. Solitude is the condition for hearing that voice again. But make no mistake, solitude is not romantic, not at first. It's not the filtered image of a person reading in peace, bathed in golden light. It is raw, disorienting, sometimes agonizing. It reveals the discomfort we've hidden beneath schedules, goals, and company. It removes the distractions we've used to avoid the truth of our lives. And the truth is this: we often do not know who we are without the mirrors of others. This is why walking alone is one of the most powerful and terrifying decisions a person can make. It means detaching from inherited identities. It means living without applause. It means facing the voice inside that says, "You are not enough," and not silencing it, but responding to it, calmly, courageously, consistently. Those who walk alone begin to see with a different clarity. They recognize how much of what passes for conviction is just habit. How much of what we call knowledge is repetition. How many dreams are not ours, but borrowed from someone else's desperation. This clarity is not kind. It does not flatter, but it frees. And with freedom comes responsibility. You can no longer blame the system, your past, or the people around you for your path. You are shaping it now, with every step, with every choice. Solitude strips away the illusion of rescue. No one is coming, no one owes you clarity, and that's what makes it beautiful, because the one who accepts this fully becomes untouchable. You stop waiting, you stop comparing, you start building. But this does not mean rejecting others. It means no longer depending on them to give your life meaning. You learn to be in community without needing to be defined by it. To love without losing yourself. To listen without abandoning your truth. You become a pillar, not because you never fall, but because you rise without being pulled. The thinker who inspired this reflection lived most of his adult life alone, not because he was incapable of connection, but because he understood its cost. He chose solitude, not as an escape, but as a condition for radical thought. And in that solitude, he developed ideas that continue to shake the world, not because they were loud, but because they were rooted. Solitude for him was not exile. It was elevation. To walk alone is to shift from seeking validation to seeking vision. It is to stop asking, "Do they approve of me?" and start asking, "Am I becoming what I respect?" This question changes everything. It becomes the compass. And every time we say yes to it, we sharpen. Every time we betray it, we fracture. And over time, we learn to trust ourselves again. To walk alone is not to be without pain. It is to learn that pain does not mean you are lost. Confusion does not mean you are wrong. Doubt does not mean you should turn back. These are part of the process. They are signs that you are no longer numbing yourself with noise. You are feeling, finally, the weight and wonder of existence. And if you keep walking, something incredible happens. You begin to enjoy the silence, not because it's comfortable, but because it's honest, because it is yours, because it asks nothing of you but everything you are. And in that space, power begins to grow, quiet, unseen, unstoppable. This is the silent trick, to walk alone, not in fear, not in bitterness, not in pride, but in freedom. To be enough in your own presence, and to realize that the path is not lonely if you are finally walking your own. What survives the storm is not what resists it, but what transforms through it. Strength is often misunderstood. People think it means never breaking, never doubting, never falling. But this is the illusion of strength, the image built by fear and ego. True strength is something else entirely. It doesn't stand tall for applause. It bends when necessary. It breaks and then rebuilds. It adapts without abandoning its essence. It burns, but never burns out. There is a fire inside those who choose this path. Not the fire of rage or ambition or conquest, but the quieter, deeper fire of becoming. A fire that endures, not because it is protected, but because it is fed by everything life throws at it. Pain becomes fuel. Rejection becomes insight. Loneliness becomes focus. Struggle becomes shape. Most people fear suffering because they believe it diminishes them. But those who discover this fire know that suffering, when faced directly, does not weaken. It forges. It strips away illusion, comfort, pretense, and what remains is something essential, untouchable. This is not resilience in the conventional sense. It is not about bouncing back to who you were before. It is about emerging as someone new, someone who could not have existed without the storm. Transformation, then, is not the exception. It is the rule of inner power. To live this way is to accept that comfort is not the goal. Comfort can make us passive, fragile, dependent. Growth, on the other hand, is uncomfortable. It is challenge, friction, failure, responsibility, but it is also beauty and purpose and freedom. There is a word for this kind of transformation: transvaluation. It means to take everything that once seemed heavy, unbearable, meaningless, and give it new value. To reframe weakness as a signal for growth, to see despair as a call to depth, to treat endings not as defeat, but as beginnings in disguise. The one who lives this way becomes dangerous, not to others, but to lies, to conformity, to anything that demands silence in the face of truth. Their fire cannot be co-opted. It does not beg, it does not shout, but it burns clean, clear, eternal. The man whose vision inspired this journey saw life as a challenge to be met with courage, not control. He taught not how to avoid suffering, but how to absorb it and use it. How to take fate, even the worst of it, and say, yes, this is mine, and I will make something from it. That is the silent trick, not to dominate others, not to be perfect, but to become unbreakable from the inside out, not by resisting change, but by inviting it, not by escaping pain, but by welcoming its lessons, and it changes everything. You no longer fear discomfort, you look for what it's teaching you. You no longer need validation, you listen for inner alignment. You no longer resent adversity, you ask what it's shaping in you, and this is the point, not to reach some final destination where life becomes easy, but to become someone for whom no experience is wasted, no challenge is meaningless, no moment is too small to contain fire. When you understand this, you don't burn out, you burn better. Every fall becomes foundation. Every scar becomes symbol. Every loss becomes leverage. You are not who you were. You are not who others expect. You are not even who you thought you'd be. You are becoming, relentlessly, quietly, fully. And that is power. You don't need to speak loudly to be powerful. You don't need to be seen to be real. You don't need to be followed to be right. The fire that burns in silence is not weak. It is focused. It does not demand. It decides. It does not plead. It persists. It does not conquer others. It transforms the self. This is not about being fearless. It's about walking forward even when afraid. It's not about being unbreakable. It's about becoming whole after breaking. The silent trick is this: power is not what you show, it's what you carry. And once you find it, truly find it, the world can no longer take it away, because it's no longer in the world, it's in you.